By now, you're starting to see your patterns. You're starting to understand where they came from, what you believe about yourself, and what you've been taught to believe about life. So the real question becomes, why am I still doing the same things? Why am I still going back even when I know better? Thank you for joining me again. This is the Becoming Her Voice series, a voice journal by Brittany Britt. Even when I know better, why are you going back? Because awareness is not the same as change. You can understand something and still not have the capacity to move differently. And this is where a lot of people get frustrated with themselves. Because now you see it, you see the pattern, you see the behavior, and you see what's not working, but you're still doing it. And that creates the feeling of, what's wrong with me? But nothing is wrong with you. You're just trying to override something that has been deeply practiced. A lot of these patterns didn't form overnight. We already talked about how they were given to us, how we observed them and we just took them on. And over time, we practiced them, we repeated them. And so they became automatic. They became our way of coping, our way of navigating and protecting ourselves. So now, even when you try to do something different, our mind, our body, our emotions pulls us back into what's familiar. And honestly, that's why it's called a pattern. A pattern is repeatedly doing the same thing over and over and over in the same way. No matter the circumstance, no matter the situations, no matter what's going on, we're repeatedly doing the same thing over and over. And once we do it so much and so often, it becomes familiar to us. It's automatic. And that's why a lot of us have been living in autopilot. Just doing things that automatically comes to us, doing things that we used to do, and doing things that are familiar to us. This is where people start doing surface level work, where they try to think differently, try to act differently, try to force change. But underneath, nothing actually shifted. So that's why I always talk about the importance of digging deep, getting to the root cause, extracting everything. Because that surface level is temporary. And it will only get you temporary results. So let's talk about what's really happening. I'm going to mention a few things that happens in this moment, right? So, one, we get comfortable in what's familiar. And oftentimes, familiar doesn't mean good. It just means that's what you used to. It's what you know. It means known. And your system will always choose what's known over what's unknown. The fear of the unknown is one of the scariest places to be. I struggled at that phase. It was just so scary. I just felt like so numb. I didn't know what's next. I didn't know what's going to happen. And so, even if that known is painful, we will still stay there because it's familiar. That's why somebody can be in a situation from the outside looking in, you like, why do they keep going back? Why do they keep allowing that? Why do they keep accepting it? Because it's what they know, it's what they're familiar with. Anything outside of that seems scary. Even if it could be potentially good for them, it still seems scary. And for some, it seems wrong. So you could say you want something different, but if different feels unfamiliar, you will unconsciously go back to what you already know. Once again, moving in autopilot, being in survival mode. And so, for an example, someone can say they want a healthy relationship, right? But when someone comes around and they actually show up consistently, and then there is no confusion, there's no emotional highs and lows, everything that someone would say that they will want, right? They actually receive that, they actually get that. Well, if that's unfamiliar to you, if you're in a pattern of being in relationships where people are not showing up, people say one thing and do the next. When someone shows up, when there's no confusion, no highs, no lows, it almost feels boring. And that leads you to start questioning or to pull back, or for some of us to even create problems that wasn't even there. And not necessarily because anything is wrong, but because the system is used to chaos. So it craves chaos. It looks for chaos. It searches for chaos. And if it's not there, it will create it. That's why I know some of us been there where we was like, where did that just come from? Why did I just say that and start that whole argument? Or why did I just shift the atmosphere like that? Like, where did that just come from? Trying to create chaos because that's what your system is used to. That's what it knows. And so another block could be, or another block is the fear of change. And so for a lot of us, change sounds good. We all want change. We all want things to be different. We all want to, maneuver in a different type of way and function differently. But that change is not always so good until it requires you to let go of what you've been holding on to. Oftentimes, we must let go of people, of patterns, of identities that we've been holding on to. Let go of versions of ourselves that we've been attached to. Change requires all of those things, especially if you want real life altering change, real life identity switches, identity transformations. It's going to require us to let some things go. Even our own pattern, our own identities. And that's not always easy. Because even if it's not working, it's still what we know, still what we're familiar with, still how we're used to operating. All that other stuff is abnormal to us. So, for example, let's say you know you need to leave something, but you continue to stay. Because now you have to face, what does life look like without this person? Who am I without this role? What if I make the wrong decision? Now that's a big one, right? What if I make the wrong decision? And so what would happen is we would stay in what's familiar, even if it's not fulfilling. And I know as you might be hearing this, you might be like, well, that don't make sense. Then why would I do this? Why do I do that? It's what we know. It's what we're used to. It's a pattern that we have been repeating over and over for years and years and years and for decades. For example, like an addict, right? Do majority of them want change? Do majority of them know that there is another option or another way out or another way to life than this? Yes. But it depends on how long they have been in their addiction. It now is familiar to them. It's what they know. They now operate in the space of an addict. It may not make sense to other people who are not in their shoes, but for them it does. And in ways in certain areas of their lives, it may not be fulfilling, but because that's what they're familiar to, the pattern they have been repeating over and over, that's what kind of keep them stuck. Would they like change? Yes. But when it comes to changing people, places, and things, that become a challenge. And so the next block is identity, right? So this is a big one. You're not just changing behavior, you also have to change who you believe you are. So if all of the time you have been identifying as someone who overgives, the one who holds everything together, the one who tolerates, the one who stays, because you're typically operating out of all of those identities. And so letting that go means becoming someone new. And that can feel uncomfortable because, once again, even though those things may not be fulfilling, that's what you know, that's what you're familiar with, that's your normal. So to not be a person who's overgiving, to not be a person who doesn't hold everything together for everybody, that's uncomfortable. Because now you don't even recognize yourself, who I am outside of that. I don't know who I would be. I don't know what I would do without doing those things or being these type of identities. And so for me, I had to really sit with this because I realized I wasn't just holding on to situations. I was holding on to who I believe I was in them. I used to be the one who stayed, the one who made it work, the one who held everything together. So when it came time to choose differently, it wasn't just about the situation. It was about letting go a version of me. And that was very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Hard pill to swallow. Because who am I without this thing, without this person, without being in this space? What am I going to do? How is that going to look for me? What's going to happen next? As I said earlier, the fear of the unknown, baby, that stage ate me alive. And so the fourth block, there's usually a lack of depth. A lot of people stop at awareness. They become aware, they see what's going on, they journal once, reflect a little bit, They have this big moment of clarity. They might get excited all over again to be on this journey. They listen to a podcast or two, and they think that's enough. But real change requires repetition. It requires intentional work. And it requires you to keep showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it is uncomfortable. Even when you don't feel like it. Even when you don't know what to do next. Even though when it seems like this is a bit too much. Even when the uncomfortable wounds and feelings you start to dig up surface or resurface. A lot of people want change, but they don't want to sit with themselves long enough to create it. They want a breakthrough moment, not the consistent work that comes after it. And that was for me. I would journal, I would read, I would listen to a video on YouTube, I would pray, I would go to church, I would do all these things. And afterwards, I just wanted that change to snap his fingers and come, and here it is. And I'm all this new person. But then I realized I have to make a conscious decision every day to do something differently, to move differently, to think differently, to feel differently, to be differently, to feed myself different things, positive things, affirmations. Every day, every second of the day. When a thought popped up that and I wanted to go left with it, my awareness will spark up. And that awareness, left or right, that determines my outcome, that determines what life looks like for me. What am I going to choose now? And so now you're in this space where you see it, but you're not fully changing it yet. And instead of meeting ourselves with understanding, we start judging ourselves. We start thinking, I should be further along. I should have known better. I should have changed by now. But healing doesn't work like that. And what happens next is you start turning on yourself. You start judging yourself for not being further along, questioning your growth. You start feeling like, why am I still here? Why am I still even doing this? And that's the self-judgment. And that only keeps us stuck even longer. Because instead of creating space for change, now we're creating pressure. And so we don't need to shame ourselves into change. We need to understand what's actually keeping us there. Because when we understand it, we then can move differently. And when we give ourselves more awareness in the moment, we are able to pause instead of reacting. We start noticing patterns as soon as they happen. That's why when I was working with in a one-on-one session, and I was saying it's kind of like that awareness is a flash. The awareness pop up as a flash. Flash, woohoo! What are you going to do? You are aware of why you have this pattern. You are aware of why you act and behave this way. You are aware. So what are you going to do next? Are you going to keep repeating the same pattern and keep having the same results and keep being stuck in the same way you are and not experiencing the change that you really want to experience in your life? Or once that awareness flash, are you going to do something different? Are you going to respond and react differently? even if it don't feel good, even if it don't feel familiar, even if it's uncomfortable? Are you going to push past that because you know what's on the other side of that is different than what's on what you're used to? And it's always up to us to decide. And so it doesn't mean everything changes overnight, right? It just means we start to catch ourselves. We start choosing differently little by little. And that's how real change begins. And most of the times, it's not that we don't want better, it's that we haven't fully created the internal shift to sustain something different. You can't force yourself into a new life. You can't force yourself into a new life while still operating from an old identity. And so this is why deeper work matters. Because awareness will show you the pattern, but it takes intentional work to actually change it. This is the work we go deep into: understanding your patterns, changing your beliefs, rebuilding your identity, and actually creating change from the inside out. That process can be done through my Becoming Her mentorship, joining my Becoming Room, listening to the Becoming Her Voice series podcast. Because one thing I want us all to remember is that you're not stuck. You're just in the space between awareness and becoming. And if you remember, or if you pay attention to every time when that awareness flash, that's asking you, what are you going to do next? Are you going to stay the same or do something differently? My name is Brittany Britt. This is the Becoming Her Voice series, a voice journal podcast. Thank you so much for joining me